Let's let's talk about the Black Company. This year I read all 10 original Black Company books. The Black Company, Shadows Linger, The White Rose, Shadow Games, Dreams of Steel, The Silver Spike, Bleak Seasons, She is the Darkness, Water Sleeps, and Soldiers Live. The Books of the North, the Books of the South, and the Books of Glittering Stone. I found myself becoming obsessed with these books, all right? Obsessed. I was glued to the pages. I couldn't put the books down. I went through a lot this year, mentally, physically, a lot of struggles. But what exactly about the Black Company that I find so captivating? You have the grim dark setting. In fact, these are the essential grim dark books. Arguably, the invention of grim dark is contained within the Books of the North, within the original three Black Company books. At the very least, Glenn Cook is the absolute pioneer of the grim dark genre. And before the Black Company, I really didn't care too much about fantasy. I don't like Tolkien. I don't like C.S. Lewis. I don't like Brandon Sanderson. I don't really like Neil Gaiman that much. I thought that most of what fantasy had to offer was something that just didn't speak to me, that just didn't communicate with me. The reason I even picked up the Black Company was because of a tabletop role playing game called Band of Blades. In the first couple pages, it's like, yo, to really get an idea of what's going on in this game, you should read The Black Company by Glenn Cook. It was the first I'd ever heard of it. That was years ago, and I put it away in my brain to look into at a later date. By the way, it's a good game. Then this year, when I decided to put a lot more effort, devote a lot more time to reading, I wanted to read the genres that I didn't really pay close enough attention to before. Because I've read a lot, but I've read a lot of classics or a lot of like philosophical texts, things that seem pretentious, but every precocious, neurotic teenager or guy in their mid 20s has to read Sartre, has to read Camus, has to read Tolstoy, has to read like all those classics too. I don't know. To feel like you're cultured or getting closer to the meaning of life. So I never really gave fantasy or science fiction, those popular fiction books, like too much attention. And Grimdark really appealed to me. Grimdark and Cyberpunk really appealed to me this year, especially the idea that Cyberpunk and Grimdark arguably were reactions to the kind of Joseph Campbell, the Campbellian supremacy of popular fiction, of pulp fiction, of science fiction and fantasy, that Tolkien obsessed, super safe and sterile and sanitized approach to fantasy. And Grimdark and Cyberpunk were kind of a reaction to that, a rebellion against it, at least arguably. And that's what drew me to Cyberpunk and Grimdark this year. And when I first picked up the Black Company, I remember being taken aback at the beginning because of the writing style, the prose. I love Glenn Cook's prose, but it's very staccato. It's possibly a good way to describe it. It is quick to the point, and yet there is poetry in these quick sentences. There is punch, so much punch. You're like, a Glenn Cook sentence of 5 words is an uppercut to the jaw, goes straight for the jugular. I think that the way that Glenn Cook writes is combative, somehow both detached and entirely tragic at the same time. I remember at first I thought this was giving Norman Mailer, Naked and the Dead. I actually really like this book. It's a good piece of war fiction. And it's pretty clear from the first Black Company book that you are getting some sort of statement or a filtering of Vietnam, of war anxieties through the fantasy genre, through Grimdark. It has more in common with Platoon than it does with Lord of the Rings. And I think that's a fairly common thing to say about the Black Company, but I still think it doesn't even paint the whole picture, because the most impressive things about the book, the things that captivated me in the first place, I did like the war setting, I did like the military warfare, but it was the fantastical elements. It was the Taken. It was Soulcatcher. It was the lady. It was Croker's obsession with the lady, Croker's psychosexual obsession with the lady, his fantasies about her, a grunt's fantasies about being sexually dominated by the most erotic metaphor for tyranny. Croker and Raven both being caught between the two, Soulcatcher and lady, the darkest examples of the psychosexual attraction that an abused citizenry has for its perversely alluring masters. The lady and Soulcatcher both are unreasonably attractive. That's part of their magic. The books of the South were beautiful. I love what we did with Lady. I love the kind of character that Lady became. The Black Company won the first book. I thought was incredible. Soulcatcher and Lady, complete MVPs there. Like, I felt like I was Croker, just morbidly, sexually obsessed, fixated, captivated by these unbelievably powerful beings, these forces of tyrannical doom. And I did think it was beautiful and poetic and stuff that you don't get in even like the highest literature possible, that truly examines the sexual fantasy that links together soldiers and those who send them to their deaths. Shadows Linger is very good too. That seems to be the one that most people like the most. It is super grimdark, super like Lovecraftian even. It's a very gothic book, probably the most gothic out of all of them. It has like the most kind of standard horrific elements or standard horror elements. And I really did like Shadows Linger. I liked it there a lot because that's when I started seeing just what Glenn Cook was doing with a character like Raven. Raven is basically Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, but humiliated. It's that ultimate loner knight savior hero character, the ultimate male power fantasy, deconstructed and humiliated. And that's when I really started to see it in Shadows Linger, just how embarrassing it was to see Raven around. And even his, like, there's going to be spoilers in this video. Just don't watch this video if you haven't read the books, I guess. Turn off now if you really care about spoilers. If you haven't read these books, go read these books. They're some of the best books I've ever read. I think they're really powerful, super underrated, super unique. Perfect books, actually. So go pick yourself up these omnibuses of the Black Company from Tor Books. But even Raven's fake out death at the end, where he like slips near like a pool and like cracks his skull open, like that was telling of like Glenn Cook, how he kind of viewed this character. I know he didn't actually die there, but that kind of like embarrassing anticlimactic death is kind of fitting of the deconstruction of the Aragorn archetype that that Cook was going for. It's when I fully understood what Raven was doing here. Shadows Linger was really good. I thought The White Rose was exceptional. The finale to the Books of the North, oh my god, that's when I didn't just feel possessed by the lady. That's when I didn't just want to possess the lady. Like, I have a huge crush on Lady. That's when I fell in love with Lady. That's when I was able to truly psychoanalyze the frailty, the fragility, the wanton self-destruction of tyranny, of order, of government. And that's when that kind of relationship between soldier and queen, between human and God, becomes a lot more fascinating and even romantic to interact with. I thought Lady was perfect here. I thought other characters like Silent really became beautiful to interact with as well. I thought The White Rose was so good. And the Books of the South, Shadow Games was good. It heralds the return of Soulcatcher. Oh my god, Soulcatcher. I want her. I want to be her slave. I have no problem saying that. And that's like the interesting part that like I have to examine about myself while reading these books is like, oh man, like why do I crave that kind of tyrannical punishment? Like what kind of kinky fucking relationship do I have with the state? Because that's what Soulcatcher kind of represents in Glittering Stone, especially in Water Sleeps and Soldiers Live near the end. She represents the state. She's a madwoman of 1,000 different voices. her reign over Taglios, the new setting for the Black Company books going forward, isn't just abusive and authoritarian. It's mania. It is actually manic. And through these books, you can actually like really have some psychologically political investigations of the self. If you're like me or if you're like Croker, you can actually go into yourself and see like what kind of strange connection does the rebel have with the abuser? What kind of relationship does the reject have with conformity? What kind of relationship does conformity even have to that which is insane? And that is Soulcatcher in a nutshell. She represents the ultimate perversions of absolute power, the perversions of magic, the perversions of the fantasy genre, even if we want to get meta in our analysis of Soulcatcher and the Black Company. Soulcatcher is amazing, and I'm glad she came back, and she's even more incredible in the books of Glittering Stone and the books of the South than she was in her one book in the books of the North. Dreams of Steel was a real knockout to me. I loved Lady. I love the book of Lady. I love her being the analyst. I love that her narration, like it really becomes obvious that there are certain hangups within our analysts, within our narrators, that maybe weren't so obvious with Croker, but become more obvious with Lady, and then the other analysts in the future, that like you can't really trust them. The Lady is such an unreliable narrator. She's delusional. She's sadistic. She's she's vengeful. She's pretty evil. She's ambitious. I love her to death. I love her to death. Like she's trying to be better, trying to be good in a certain way, or at least trying to be a decent human leader, because she has lost her magical abilities, her eternity. Like she has lost her eternal qualities, but she still commands such a presence. I love her voice so much. I love the Book of Lady. I love Dreams of Steel, and I love that like Soulcatcher is trying to steal Croker away from Lady. I love so much of it. It's the characters that I love so much about these books, because these characters, I think, are representative of larger political, psychological, sexual things in my life that I've been like having hangups with, insecurities with, just fucking things that I can't get past. And through characters like Lady, Soulcatcher, Croker, obviously Sleepy later on means a whole lot to me. I'm able to really investigate like weird things about myself that I love. I love the Book of Lady, and I love that we're getting mixed up with kind of more Eastern ideas about God, about spirituality. We are talking about deicide a bit more explicitly, and which hints at even more interesting philosophical elements being fully explored within the Glittering Stone. Then I read the Silver Spike. Some people read the Silver Spike directly after the Books of the North, and that makes a lot of sense. I didn't, because that's not the order that the omnibuses were given to me in. And I really didn't mind it, because the Silver Spike was so good. I think there's a lot of obvious problems with the Silver Spike, but they're so forgivable. It's Glenn Cook being a little bit faster about it, a little bit trashier, a little bit of Elmore Leonard involved there. There's a bit more of a crime thriller aspect to this, especially with the men who are trying to steal the spike in the first place, and how like they kind of turn on each other and their whole charade just falls apart, basically. The most interesting thing to me about the Silver Spike is, Silent, the White Rose, but especially Raven. Raven's actual death in the Silver Spike is beautiful. I mean, if Silent didn't have you crying with his unrequited love, sacrificing himself at the foot of the Limper, who is such a grotesque and brilliant, like probably the quintessential grimdark villain is the Limper, but specifically in the Silver Spike, he's just a massive grotesquerie. He's a monster. I love it. But if Silent didn't make you cry by doing that. And also, I love that the only word Silent speaks in this whole fucking series is Dorothea Senjak, is Lady's true name. Like, oh god, I should have seen that coming a mile away in the fucking White Rose, but it got me just freaking the fuck out. Love it. Hard to stay. It's so fucking cool, bro. To stay on topic here, Raven's death was amazing. Him trying to like win the White Rose's heart and love, affections once more. I mean, we'd already seen Raven be pathetic with his long lost biological children. The first time we see Raven in the Black Company, he's strangling his fucking ex-wife to death. Like, this isn't a good guy. This is deconstruction of Aragorn. I fucking love it. But, like, he's trying to win her affections again, and at the end, he gets the spike. All the power goes into him from the spike, and then the White Rose has to order a fucking centaur-like woman or some shit to throw a pole through his fucking head. He dies pathetically, trying pathetically to win the affection of a girl that he burned so many bridges with. Oh, that's powerful. Silver Spike was great. Then we get into the books of Glittering Stone. I remember Bleak Seasons gave me difficulties. Not only are we with Mergen now, who's an analyst, but we're kind of going back to Deja Gore, and like seeing things in different ways. And I wouldn't call it a difficult narrative to follow, but a frustrating one. But I think would have to be deliberately frustrating. It's the book of the Black Company that I like the least, but I still like it a lot. There's a disconnect with Bleak Seasons and the reader, and I think there should be, because there's a disconnect between Deja Gore and Mergen himself, and that's really where we can truly engage with proper PTSD or complex PTSD through Bleak Seasons, through that sort of thing. Bleak Seasons is a really good book, and it kicks off the Glittering Stone. She is the Darkness, I thought was excellent. It's another Mergen story. He's narrating that one as well. Haven't mentioned One Eye and Goblin yet, and I really should. They're so cool. We love them. Just insane, great comic relief. And as the books of Glittering Stone progress, they become full of pathos, full of humanity, and become some of the most tragic elements of the entire series. But it's high time I mentioned fucking One Eye and Goblin. They're the best. But She is the Darkness, I thought was really good, especially for a diehard devotee of Soulcatcher like me. I loved Soulcatcher and She is the Darkness. I love that this is kind of like the Empire Strikes Back of this series. The Soulcatcher wins. Soulcatcher springs a trap on the Black Company once they actually make it onto the plane of Glittering Stone, and traps them under the fortress with no name in a stasis. All of the heavy hitters of the Black Company, we're talking Croker's there, Lady's there, Mergen's there, Blade's there, Cordy Mather's there, Ty Day is there. Like, everybody who is a heavy hitter is there, apart from One Eye, Goblin, Sara, Willow Swan, because Willow Swan actually conspired with Soulcatcher in betraying the Black Company. And it dawns on me that I think that Willow Swan and I are pretty alike. I started off this series being obsessed with Lady and Soulcatcher. And if Soulcatcher just batted her eyelashes at me, if she just smiled at me correctly, I would betray anybody for her. And then be tormented by it for the rest of my life. So Willow Swan, I get you, dude. I understand where you were coming from. Soulcatcher, yeah, some things you just can't resist. But of course, Sleepy is another one who wasn't in stasis. And in She is the Darkness, it is revealed that Sleepy had been a woman the whole time. Sleepy is a character who means the world to me. She's my favorite character in the entire series, and she didn't become my favorite character until I read through her own voice and saw the world of the Black Company through her eyes in Water Sleeps, which is my favorite fantasy book currently. I think it's the best fantasy book I've read, and it's easily one of the 5 best books I've ever read, period. I love Sleepy's voice. I love Sleepy's religious dedication. She's Vedna. Her religion seems to have a lot in common with something like Islam. We can extrapolate a lot of metaphorical value from her kind of Islamic resistance fighting then through the guerrilla warfare that she interacts with and engages with against Soulcatcher and Mogaba. I think that Sleepy's androgyny is fascinating and something that I think that I identify with, at least on a personal level. My feelings feel androgynous. A lot of my feelings often mask themselves as other ones. And I think that Sleepy is androgynous inside and out. I think she's a guarded character. I think she's a very clever character. I see a lot of myself within Sleepy, especially within the guerrilla war fighting tactics, especially within even the idea, the Turkish proverb of water sleeps, but the enemy never rests. I love Sleepy so much. Sleepy means so much to me. When she finally gets out to the plane and like sees like, you know, like Big Bucket dead, who meant like a lot to her. We get a lot of emotional elements there. I love her kind of battling Soulcatcher and kind of winning that bit of a scrimmage. She wins the guerrilla war with Soulcatcher and makes it out onto the plane, and then frees the captive, frees everyone who's in stasis, and then Shvetya, the demon who guards the fortress, kind of gives her all these revelations, and she learns so much about the world. And I love seeing the religion through her eyes, even though, like Kina, who was often known as like Kadi and a bunch of different things within the many different religions of Taglios within the south, you know, within the Gunnies, within the Vedna, within the Shaydar. Uh, Kadi or Kina is kind of involved intimately and integrally with all of those different kind of religious myths. And she's able to join Goblin as Goblin charges at a god with the lance and sacrifices himself for Tobo's safety. Like, she's able to participate in attempted deicide and also be able to separate the goddess demon Kina from her actual Vedna religion. She's able to separate Shvetya, all these larger than life people, from her religious convictions, because her faith in God is what gives her identity, is what keeps her identity solid within her own mind, within her own spirit. And she's also a character who is constantly processing trauma because she was sexually abused terribly by her uncles when she was a kid. That's how Big Bucket and her, like, became so close in the first place, because like I think she was Deja Gorian. So I think the first time you see her is in Bleak Seasons, and the Black Company basically rescues her from the abusive household, thinking, of course, that Sleepy was a young boy. They rescue her and put Sleepy into their ranks. So all throughout Water Sleeps, she is processing trauma, processing herself, processing all of this new, like, kind of divine information that should conflict directly, and does conflict directly, with her Vedna religious belief systems. But she doesn't let it alter her, because if her religion was altered, so would her personality, so would her identity. And her identity is the thing that she keeps most private, but that's also the thing that's the most constant and the most enduring about her, and this found family of the Black Company that she's surrounded herself with and has dedicated her life to. I thought Water Sleeps was brilliant. It really made me see the world in a new kind of spiritually political way that I am really grateful for. I love the Black Company. I think it's very, very, very good, and I think Water Sleeps is amazing. And Soldiers Live, I just finished a few days ago, and I thought it was beautiful. A beautiful book. And it was a frustrating read too, because my God, this omnibus is called The Many Deaths of the Black Company. And yo, they're not lying. They dropped like flies in Soldiers Live, starting with One Eye, which was really sad. Starting with One Eye. They even bring Goblin back to kill him again. They just start dropping like flies. And that's where I think we got the most hyper realistic with the military warfare, the military fantasy of the Black Company, which Glenn Cook is so famous for. So many of these deaths are unceremonious. These aren't like heroes' deaths, right? They're just things that fucking happen. Soldiers live and wonder why. You know, death is just as seemingly random as life is in Soldiers Live. So a lot of people, it's just unceremonious. It's just, oh, by the way, Willow died, Blade died too. I guess Sarah's dead. No one can find her, and she's a ghost now. So I guess she died. You know, and even Sleepy's death, caught in a trap that Mogaba and Aradatha Singh set, well, originally constructed to kill Soulcatcher with. Poisoned and boiled and burned alive and all sorts of shit. Just quick, fast cruelty. And suddenly, this character who you've become so intimately associated with, like with me and Sleepy, is just dead within a paragraph unceremoniously. But that, like, that has to be the most realistic example of war, right? Just people die. People die. It doesn't have a big poetic moment. It's not a hero's death. It's not a big thing. It's not a big narrative hike, right? They just die, and it's pointless, and it's often hyper violent and just cruel. Unceremonious is really the best word, and Soldiers Live, I think, does the best illustrating the obscene, arcane pointlessness of combat, of the casualties of war, the obscene, arcane pointlessness of a lot of it. Soldiers live and wonder why. Like, I love that the two final books have this kind of ringing sensation to me with its titles of Water Sleeps But the Enemy Never Rests, Soldiers Live and Wonder Why. Just incredible stuff. I love that Sleepy is the captain of the Black Company. I love everything that Sleepy did this book. I love most of everything that goes on in the book. I think that Goblin, maybe he should have stayed dead. You know, I don't mind him coming back in Soldiers Live to die again, actually killing Kina, but I remember his death hit me really hard in Water Sleeps, and I thought it was so heroic and so sad and tragic. You know, but then again, that would have been a hero's death. You have to, I guess Glenn Cook can't let any character die a hero's death, so he had to bring him back and have him die a bit less passionately, a bit less emotionally, I guess. Even though he did die killing Kina, a goddess, like Deicide is handled in this book. I like the new characters a lot. I like it's Shuck Rat and Arcana quite a bit, and I'm excited to read Lies Weeping. I'm going to read Lies Weeping and Port of Shadows as well, the newer books that Glenn Cook wrote within the Black Company series. So I liked Arcana and Shuck Rat quite a bit. And Tobo's okay too. I don't mind Tobo at all. But Soldiers Live was great. I love Soul Catcher so much. I love Lady so much. And Croker ascended to godhood, essentially. Able to see all the histories, all the narratives, all the annals, all the stories, and keep his dead kid, the daughter of Knight and Soulcatcher, his sister-in-law, on ice, literally, while feeding his wife with the power that she craves to feel whole, like a whole woman. Soldiers Live and Wonder Why. These are pretty depressing books, but I just find so much value within the characters, so much value within what is being said throughout the books. I love the battles. I guess I do really like military fantasy. I do like the warfare elements involved. Some of it's really clever, some of it's really fun. Most of it is brutal and pitiless, merciless. And I think I really responded to that in a good way. The Taken are a beautiful, like, gothic rogues gallery of brilliant fantasy villains. You know, like, love the Howler, love Limper. Obviously, I love Soulcatcher, the Shifter, and all those guys. Dominator is also like a great kind of villain too. I love all these characters, man. The death that hit me the hardest was Goblin in Water Sleeps, and then Sleepy in Soldiers Live. Um, and the character who means the most to me is Sleepy. She resonates most with me. But there is a lot to be said about how much I desire and am stimulated by Lady and Soulcatcher and everything that they do throughout the entire series. I think the characters that I'm actually most like are Croker and Willow Swan, but I think, like, my soul is most like Sleepy. If that makes any sense. And I think it's good to talk, like, in very meaningful ways, saying words like soul and heart and desire when talking about the Black Company, because I don't think enough people do. Like, when we interact with Grimdark, I don't see a lot of people, like, being super vulnerable with the books, because I think Grimdark does attract a certain quadrant of fantasy readers who are like, I don't know, a bit they're a bit like the metalheads of the fantasy genre. They don't really want to show their emotions too much. Shit happens, that kind of thing. But I think that certain books like The Black Company kind of compel you to, well, whether you want to or not. Books like The Black Company kind of expose your own vulnerabilities as a reader, independent from the work itself, and it interrogates those vulnerabilities, interrogates your insecurities, interrogates your desires, interrogates your narrative expectations of fantasy series, and investigates the reader thoroughly. And I think that you feel like that as a reader, you feel like you fully explored like so many parts of yourself. And I think they are those darker parts of yourself, those parts of yourself that are capable of like pretty bad things, and certainly capable of desiring and loving people who commit unspeakable acts of carnage. Like that's really interesting stuff. I think that the books are great. I think the prose is um enormously important to the series. Like there's unexpected poetry in these quick, snappy lines and these quick um, statements that Cook's making throughout the series within his prose. I think the books of Glittering Stone are maybe the most fascinating to grapple with. Like I love entertaining these more religious concepts, these concepts of deicide, all under the banner of like guerrilla warfare, of birthright, and of realizing that this world is like a multidimensional kind of system that you could never truly begin to understand. And like the Black Company being like the last free company of Kadavar, and that world having no remembrance of you, like you don't matter cosmically. Like this is a uh, cosmically pessimistic series, but I think that it's got a sobering quality to the reader. Um, it gives me everything I want from fantasy. It really does. And I like these multidimensional concepts as well that Glenn Cook is playing with throughout Glittering Stone, and especially like through the perspective of a character like Sleepy more than anyone else. And Soulcatcher. Soulcatcher manipulates all of it, and it's pretty fucking awesome. Like I love how she just sees it as like another kind of like tabletop like game board, like a not even chess, just fucking checkers. She's pretty violent and impulsive with a lot of her planning, and she just sees like the board of the plane with all of its different like shadow gates and shit as different things to manipulate and play with, and like crude, crass, and shallow ways. I love her to death, but to see it through a character like Sleepy's eyes, who like the Vedna religion, her religion means so much to her, and all this stuff conflicts directly with it, and yet she doesn't let it disintegrate any part of her faith, because that faith, many things can be true at the same exact time. God can be both real and unreal at the same exact time. Your identity, though, your identity is this constant thing. Your identity is important. God is important to your identity. Then God will never be apart from your identity, no matter if you know for certain that it's very unlikely at best that God is true, that your actual version of religion is true, but it's your identity. It's what saved you through those darkest moments of your life. Who cares if it isn't real? And based on everything you've seen, you know that cynicism isn't the answer. Because for a lot of people, seeing all those like crazy things like Hina and Chevetya and the plane itself, the Fortress of No Name itself, all these like magical beings like Soulcatcher and Howler and shit, all these crazy things that you've seen. For a lot of people, that would completely disrupt their faith and kill their faith. But for people like Sleepy and for people like me, it would make us even less certain about anything. And anything that's like truly solid and understandable and real, which would give more credence to faith itself. Like, how can I be sure if God isn't real when all these other things exist too? I obviously know nothing. Like, Sleepy seems to be the most comfortable with her being forgotten thanks to her faith, because she lives for the company itself. She truly lives for the company itself, for her found family, for this vague idea of freedom, which is totally informed by her Vedna religion. And I love that so much. Just like they were talking about when Croker wrote about Silent in the Books of the North, he's like, this is the guy who cares the least about how he's remembered, about how he's written in the annals. He doesn't care about how he's written. Like, Silent has a bit of respect for like the oral reading, like ritual that the Black Company does. In those days, the company were in service of the blah blah blah. Like, he has respect for the tradition of the analyst, but he doesn't care how he's written in them. He doesn't care how people remember him. I think Sleepy and Silent would have gotten along. Honestly, I think they would have got along rather famously. Sleepy and Silent. Yeah. Sorry, I just went on a whole tangent that might have nothing to do with anything, but that's this kind of series, right? Like, I can think about just certain characters and just be lost, and while I'm talking about these characters, I'm actually more accurately talking about me, myself. And that's what makes these books so good. I love the settings. I love all the different characters. I love the backstabbing. I love the intrigue. I love the manipulative designs of its villains. I love the tales of half conceived, half finished redemption throughout the books. I like its moral ambiguities. I like the book's morality system a lot. I like that it is conflicted and contradictory because I feel like it's more realistic. I like military fantasy that is dark like this because I think that war itself is almost too difficult to like fully explore within literary fiction, within like the more commonly praised forms that you normally read it within, even nonfiction. I think that war is really difficult to get out just how fucking dumb and violent and sad war truly is. And you can get that out through fantasy really easily because you're given such a great creative license to be as brutal or as careless as possible, as you'd like to be while writing it. So far as media art that I've consumed this year, The Black Company is the best of it. These books and I think the Sprawl trilogy by William Gibson within the cyberpunk genre, the two best things I've interacted with. And I want to tell you guys about art. Black Company deserves this video. I love this series. There's plenty more I haven't said. Like, fuck, man. Like, the second I end this recording, I'm gonna remember something of like, why the hell didn't you say that, Zach? That's a really interesting thing to say. But maybe I don't want to steal all the good words, all the good ideas, man. Read this series. It's pretty easy. And tell me what you think of it. Let me know. I want to read your thoughts on The Black Company. I want to know which characters you found most provocative. I love The Black Company, the best fantasy series I've read. And I don't see it ever being beat by anything. Fucking long live The Black Company.